Hi guys, it's Steph from iDRIVEACLASSIC, or should I say Konnichiwa, because today we are back in another Japanese car which I have long admired and I'm super excited to show you. So today we're back in the K10 Nissan Micra. Now, in today's video, I'm going to do exactly what we usually do. So I'm going to show you around the outside of the car, bring you on the inside. We're going to have a look through the dash. I'll walk you on through it, and we're going to go out for a drive too. We'll start the car up. We'll have a look under the bonnet. Essentially, we're going to have a good old route through this amazing little Japanese car and discover exactly what it's all about. So let's start by having a walk around the outside of the car. Now, the Nissan Micra K10, or depending where you are in the world, you may know this as the Nissan March, was a quiet and unassuming small super mini launched by the company then known as Datsun, now known as Nissan, in 1982. So it originally started in the Nissan Cherry stores in Japan, or Datsun Cherry stores in Japan, and was released to the wider world in 1983. So the car was launched in that crazy Datsun Nissan crossover period, which meant that early cars available in the beginning were badged as Datsun, and so they were known as the Datsun Micras. And as time went on, they had some of them were dual badged, so they were badged as Datsun Nissan to help people feel comfortable about that crossover. And then when they kind of had the facelift in 1985, well, end of 1984, start 85, they then just became known as the Nissan Micra. Now, the car we're looking at today is a later facelift, which means you've got the bigger backlight and soulless Nissan badging. Also, interestingly, you'll be able to see this is badged as a premium. Now, I did a bit of digging through forums and internet groups, and while some people have said this is definitely a dealer special, I have found other evidence that premium was a bit of a thing. So I found other premiums, so perhaps this was a bit of a variant. So just a bit like my beloved Metro offered in Metro City, perhaps the K10 Premium is just something that's been forgotten in the reams of car history. But if you do know anything about it, pop it in the comments section, because I do love to hear a little bit more. Now, interestingly, when we looked on howmanyleft.com, they do have Nissan Premium as an option, and this is the only one showing as remaining. Now, the K10 was launched to compete in that super mini little car market, which I mentioned before, which I guess nowadays in the world of bloated SUVs, it seems bizarre to think that the world of super minis was a massive deal in the 80s, and this was brought in to replace the Nissan Cherry, which, just as the Nissan Micra now has become kind of bigger over time, it meant that the Cherry didn't fit in that little car box and they needed something else. And for those of you that like a bit of a geeky fact, this car, as you've probably noticed, is from 1990, which was the K10's most popular year, with circa 50,000 cars being sold, making it the 11th most popular imported car in the UK. Not to be sniffed at, and definitely makes this worthy of fitting in the, in inverted commas, proper classic car category, which so many people use to disregard the sometimes forgotten heroes of the 80s, the 90s, and I guess as time moves on, the early 2000s. Now, with Nissan becoming a bigger name as the 80s progressed, this was one of the last years, 1990, when Nissan's production was based in Japan, because from 1992, the year where we saw the birth of the iconic K11 Micra, Nissan manufactured cars in Sunderland, northeast England. And it wasn't just the K10 which proved to be popular either, because by 1998, a mere 6 years into production of the K11, they produced over 1 million Micras. Now, whenever I talk about car designs for older cars, I talk about cars being iconic and instantly recognisable, and what makes a classic car a classic car. Now, when I did a bit of digging, I found out that the head designer for the K10 was also instrumental in the design of the Skyline series and the Nissan Prairie. Pretty mixed bag, but I definitely think the Prairie and the K10 look related. Now, before we go any further, please remember that this car was launched to fit in that budget super mini box. So it kind of lacks some of the finesse of things that we've taken out, like the Rolls-Royce, but it doesn't matter, because with reliability, Q80 styling and economic purchase price and maintenance, who needs bells and whistles when you can have colour-coded dashes and hot hatch hijinks? Right, I think it's time we shut this door and we popped inside and had a little walk through this car's dash. Now, this is quite interesting for me, because as an Austin Metro driver, if I'd been in that space at the right time, I guess this would have been something that I could have weighed up as another alternative to getting you know, getting instead of the Austin Metro. Now, at the same time as this launching, so it came out in 1982 in the Nissan Cherry stores in Japan, and it came into Europe in 1983, and it came into kind of a space that we don't really see anymore in today's modern cars, which is that hot hatch super mini space of the market. So it came out at the same time as the Vauxhall Nova and the Fiat Uno as well, and it's a great car. And for me, it's a bit weird testing this because it's kind of like, oh, this is what you could have won, you know. So what we'll do is we'll start by having a look at the dash, and I'll talk you through what we've got. And now for me, something that I think is a massive plus point if you were back in the day looking at one of these is, as many of you know, I absolutely love a glove box, and over here we've got a glove box, a standard, whereas when you went for something like an Austin Metro, to give it a bit of perspective, that was something you had to pay extra for. And as well, you've got a really nice, and I do love a color coded dash. I love the fact that this is brown. Some people might say, well, that's a bit boring, but I feel like they've really incorporated it all the way through. So over here we start with our glove box, and we've got our brown dash, and again you've got a substantial dash there to put bits and pieces on, you know, Murray mints and such like, as you would if you were a pensioner. Now over here you've got your air vents, and just like the Volvo that we tested a month or so ago, these only blow cold air. You've got your cigarette lighter as standard. Again, this wasn't cars of this era when you went for your super minis and people were going for a budget. These weren't always standard. This is all attractively laid out, so this is your hot and cold temperature, your blowers, and as well you've got the radio. Now this is the original radio to the car, so it's medium and long wave, which means that Tom, the owner of the car, really is only getting Radio 5 Live and absolute 80s as well. Now when we look straight down at us and we look at the dash, again, everything kind of feels quite sturdy, which is quite nice. It doesn't feel like brittle plastic hell like some of the cars of this era, and in fact it feels remarkably well made, which is exactly what I said when we took out the Nissan Cherry. And so when we look down at this dash, what have we got? We've got your rear heated screen. So for me, I believe, doing a bit of digging around, this seems to have been pretty standard. You've got your lights, you've got warning sensors, you've got your oil, you've got your battery. It's pretty much your absolute basics that you can get away with, but it seems to be, you know, it seems to be remarkably well laid out. You've got your hazard warning switch over here, you've got your wipers over here, so you've got it on off, low and high as well, and you've got your pull to pull on your washers. Now, something that you would have got on some of these cars of the era, some of your super minis, is intermittent wipers, and in fact you don't realise how much you enjoy an intermittent wiper until it's taken away. And over here you've got your lights and you've got your indicators as well, and over here you've got a blanking plate, so I'm not entirely sure what that was for. And then down here as well, now this isn't always standard in super minis of this era, is that you've got as well your fog lights. So it's just down there, it's off to one side, but it does have a little warning light on it to tell you it's on. So for a lot of people that are driving modern cars, they'll say, well, these sorts of things are standard, why are you pointing them out? Well, in the perspective of this era, this is a great car. Now the only thing I don't like about it, and this is me being an absolute nitpicker, is I don't like the fact that the wiper stalk over here doesn't match the lights and the indicator. Now I know that's me being a bit silly, but it's the only thing I don't like about it, because it's really nice, because as you sit on, and if you've ever been in an Austin Metro, you know everything's offset to one side, which can, I think, put some people off. Everything here is dead center, so you get in, it's dead center, it drives straight, and it's really nice. So what else have we got? We've got the color coded, runs through all the doors. I'm going to try and show you the vinyl on the doors over here, because this is much easier for me to show you. You've got your window winders, you've got your door pull, and you've got just your shut there. Now, as I said earlier, all the plastic feels very sturdy. It doesn't feel brittle, it doesn't feel like it's going to break off in my hands, and for a budget car, for a small budget car, it feels remarkably well made, and it's really stood the test of time. And there's a few bits that I want to point out to you that I think are quite nice. So you've got your You've got your rear light up here. Now it's centralised in the middle of the car. So instead of getting all your light focused on the front in the dark, it gives you a nice kind of warm glow throughout the whole car. So if you're scrabbling around in the back trying to look for a bit of paperwork or your glasses or something you tossed over your shoulder later on, it's remarkably easy to find. Now I also want to show you this sunroof. So you've got sunroof here. So that pops up and it comes back down, which I can never get down, but it all pops back down. And one of the nicest things about this is that it doesn't leak. Now that's quite rare for a car of this age, that it doesn't leak. And the other nice thing, and do you know what, we talked about this loads when we took the Jags out, is roof sag. Now this, because it's this really nice kind of fake vinyl-y material, reminds me a bit of the Morris Minor seats actually, it's the same sort of fabric. It isn't sagging, it's still all up there. They haven't used cheap glue, it hasn't come back through, so it's not stained the headlining. And in fact, to say this car has done over 50,000 miles, which isn't small mileage, it's not like we're testing out a concours example, it's in remarkably good shape for the, you know, for the age of the car. So we've had a look around the outside. Now the next thing I want to do is just show you the gears, and we can then set off. We can get the car started up, we can set off and hear what she sounds like. Now just quickly before we set off, I thought I'd show you the gearbox. So foot down on the clutch, because of course this is a manual, not an automatic. So we come right across, we go up into first, easy to find, down into second and across, up into third, down into fourth, and we've only got fourth gears, so we're going to come right across and we're going to go down, and that brings us into reverse. Now before we head out for a drive, we're going to start this car up. So we'll talk about it when we're driving about, but the K10 Micra had its very own engine, which was so good they started using it on other cars. So before we start up, it's worth noting that before I turn the key in, before we start the car up, I am just going to put my foot and give one pump on the accelerator there, and that's because this is an auto choke, not a manual. So with a manual, you would set it up yourself, and it would be a lot of cars, you know, Rover were making manual chokes all the way through into kind of early mid-90s. So it's quite weird actually to get in something that is auto choke. It's not something I'm familiar with. So we're going to turn the key there, I'm going to give it another turn, and we'll get that started up. So this is a 1 litre, and now one of the things that people always talk about, and you'll be able to hear when we go out for the drive today hopefully, is this car is remarkably quiet and doesn't fit that reputation of being a noisy little car. Because a lot of people have said, you know, the sound deadening and all the gubbins inside, which they took out to make the car as light as possible and give it the best MPG, made it a little bit noisy. But honestly, I don't think this is any noisier than the Metro. So give it a couple of revs so you can hear the engine before we set off, and we'll take her out for a drive. So have a listen. Sounds pretty healthy to me. So let's go, we'll buckle up and we'll take her out for a drive. So as the weather turns, I want to talk to you about what it's like to drive this amazing Nissan Micra. First of all, it's not the nippiest thing I've ever driven, but it's a 1 litre, so who cares? You know it's going to be a bit slower than, you know, your souped up 1.8 Golf, you know, and all the rest of it that it might come up against. But God, it is a lot of fun. It's very responsive. The handling is super light. It's got the turning circle, I believe, on average, I think it's roughly about the same as a London taxi, and as well as that, it stops on an absolute penny. Watch it. And as you can see, as we pull off, it's got a nice little turning circle there, and we can keep up with the modern traffic. It's really nice to drive, and it feels ever so sturdy as well. And I guess people would say to me, what's it like to drive versus the Austin Metro? Now, I feel like my face is going to be on the dartboard of many a British Leyland fanatic when I tell you that this feels a lot more sturdy than the car that it would have come up against, your Mark 1 Metro, for example. If we're looking at the British Leyland market, I've not driven a Starlet, and if I'm comparing it to the It's nice to drive, it's quiet enough to say that everybody moaned that it was loud, and it can keep up with modern traffic around town. And as well as that, it's economical to drive. So I was talking about the K10 engine earlier on, and I was saying that it was designed for the car at the time, and it was later used in, I think, the BE1 or the B1, which was one of those Nissan Cherry Store cars, and it was used in the Figaro as well. So it's a full aluminium engine, and they basically built it to be economical, which makes it no surprise that the Micra is a favourite of budget-conscious teenagers and students, pensioners who are trying to eke out an ever-dwindling pension, and also takeaway drivers looking to make the biggest margin they can on their deliveries. And it's known for, it's known for being economical, and it's because of that engine. It's because they designed it in terms of being a light shell deliberately to get that fuel economy up, and it's just a really great car. So I guess it's probably time to talk about what these cars are actually worth, and whether you should consider one as your classic. Now, we've talked a little bit about what it's like to drive, so let's talk about the affordability aspect. So this car is in a really weird position at the moment that you can buy, and this is so rare for a classic car of like the 80s and the 90s, that you can buy a really good example for very little cost. And in fact, this car costs less than £1,000. Now, if you were to try and get a Metro or some of the other smaller cars like Novas and Astras for the same sort of money, you're probably going to come up against very slim pickings. Whereas these are still a car that you can get a really good example for very little money. Now, insurance-wise, again, this is a market that you can compete in. You can definitely look into, because even if you are a younger driver and the owner of this driver has it on a black box because he's under 25, you can definitely consider one of these cars. And in fact, I believe he's paying less than £1,000 a year. Now, if you were to get a car on finance, you could be looking at anywhere up to 200. Well, to be honest, most people seem to be paying around £200 a month just for the car alone, and then you've got the insurance on top, which runs into thousands of pounds. You can't fix it at home yourself, and it's quite a costly exercise into car ownership, and probably puts a lot of people off. And I think a lot of the other classics that are available in the under 1,000 mark, years ago you used to be able to pick up a Morris Minor. Really, you could have gone on eBay, you could have picked up a copy of the local paper, or even up to about, I would have said 5 or 6 years ago, you could have picked up a decent Morris Minor for around £1,000. Those days are gone, but I think also tastes are changing. I think that people nowadays are looking into more modern classics, and you come up against things like people that have got Fords, and they say, well, my Ford is worth thousands of pounds, and my VW, VW seem to either be thousands of pounds, or they've gone too far for you to comfortably fix at home if it's your first classic. So all in all, I would probably say it's time to start looking a little bit closer at the K10 Micra, and in fact the K11 Micra, because for the type of car that it is, a small car, a mini car, it's great to drive. As you can see, as we drive along, we've got excellent visibility. It's pretty quiet as well, so we're obviously going across the Absolutely yes. Would I own one? The only thing that's stopping me is I don't have driveway space. Now it's almost time for me to throw the keys back to the owner, Tom, and say goodbye to you guys. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you've enjoyed having a look around this car, and I hope I've made the world of K10 Micras a little bit more special for you. Now until next time, take care and drive safely.